Everyone thought he was just a poor, scared kid who had already lost, until he stood up in court and did something no one expected. Not the judge, not the jury, not even his lawyer. What he did next changed everything. Imagine a 17-year-old boy living in one of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods, quiet, reserved, and carrying dreams bigger than his surroundings. This is Jason Carter. Jason wasn't the type to cause trouble. He wasn't loud or flashy. He kept mostly to himself, blending into the crowded streets filled with noise, challenges, and uncertainty. But behind his calm demeanor was a mind full of hope and a heart full of determination. At school, Jason was the kind of student who listened more than he spoke. Teachers noticed his sharp mind, his way of quietly absorbing everything, always asking questions in his own thoughtful way. He wasn't a star athlete or a class clown. He was just Jason, a young man who wanted more from life than what his tough neighborhood seemed to offer. Growing up in Chicago wasn't easy for Jason. The city's streets were marked by struggles that many teens face: poverty, violence, and a daily fight just to stay safe. Yet Jason dreamed beyond those streets. He wanted a future where he could break free from the cycle around him, where he could make a difference not just for himself, but for his family. At home, Jason's world revolved around his mother, Lisa, a single parent working multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Despite long hours and exhaustion, she always made time to remind Jason that his education was his ticket out. Jason's little sister, Emily, looked up to him with wide, trusting eyes. He felt responsible for both of them, carrying that weight quietly on his shoulders. Jason's days were packed with school and a part-time job at the local corner store. Every afternoon, after classes, he'd clock in, stocking shelves or running the register, doing whatever was needed to help out. He wasn't just working for himself. He was working so Lisa could pay the bills, so Emily could have the things kids deserve. Even with so much on his plate, Jason found small moments of peace. Sometimes it was music playing softly through his headphones, or the rare quiet evening where he could stare out the window and imagine what life could be. College, a career, maybe even traveling somewhere far from Chicago's harsh realities. But beneath the surface, there was also fear. Fear of the streets he walked every day. Fear that no matter how hard he tried, the world might still judge him based on where he came from, not who he was. Jason knew the statistics. Kids like him didn't always get a second chance. Still, he held on to hope, because Jason Carter was more than just a kid from a tough neighborhood. Lisa was a single mother working 2 jobs every day and night to make sure her children had a roof over their heads and food on the table. But Lisa's life was more than just hard work and sacrifice. It was a story of love, resilience, and unwavering hope. Lisa's mornings began before the sun rose, waking up early to get ready for her first shift as a nurse's aide at a local hospital. She was known for her kindness to patients and her determination to make a difference. Even when she was tired, after her shift ended, she didn't get to rest. She headed straight to her second job at a diner, where she waited tables until late into the evening. Despite the exhaustion, Lisa never complained in front of her kids. Her face would light up when she saw Jason and Emily, her little family, and she made sure to remind them how proud she was. Lisa's sacrifices were the invisible threads holding their family together, threads that Jason understood more deeply than anyone else. Emily, Jason's younger sister, was only 8 years old. She was the sparkle in their small apartment, full of curiosity and innocent laughter. Emily adored her older brother, always running to him with the kind of trust and love that only a little sister could give. To her, Jason was a superhero, someone strong enough to protect her from the worries of their world. Jason, in turn, took that role seriously. More than just a brother, he was a guardian, a mentor, and a friend. After school, he helped Emily with her homework, cooked simple meals, and did his best to make sure she felt safe, especially on the nights when the city's noise and shadows crept too close to their door. Money was tight, really tight. Bills piled up faster than Lisa could pay them, and sometimes the fridge was nearly empty by the end of the week. But in the middle of those struggles, there was something powerful, a bond between mother and children that refused to break. Every dollar Lisa earned was stretched as far as it could go, and Jason knew the weight of that struggle. He could see it in the way Lisa's hands trembled from exhaustion, in the worried glances she sometimes cast at overdue notices slipped between the mail. But what Jason admired most was her refusal to give up. Jason often thought about what life could be if things were easier. He dreamed of a day when his mom wouldn't have to work 2 jobs, when Emily could have new shoes without him worrying if there'd be enough money left for groceries. Those dreams gave him strength. In those quiet moments after Emily was asleep and Lisa was finally resting, Jason would sit. Lisa made sure family dinners happened as often as possible, no matter how tired she was. They were simple meals, maybe spaghetti or chicken and rice, but those moments were sacred. Around that small table, they talked about school, dreams, and sometimes just shared stories to make each other smile. Jason's favorite thing was when Lisa told stories about her own childhood. Stories of hope, perseverance, and lessons learned. She wanted Jason and Emily to know that no matter how hard life got, family was everything. Even the neighborhood they lived in, with all its challenges, couldn't break that spirit. Jason's family was like a tiny island of warmth in a world that often felt cold and unforgiving. Still, there were days when the struggle felt overwhelming. Jason had seen his mom break down once or twice after a long day, and he hated those moments, hated feeling powerless. But even then, Lisa would pick herself up and remind him, "We're stronger than this, Jason. We'll get through." Jason took those words deep into his heart. They weren't just promises. They were the fuel that kept him going when things seemed impossible. So when life threw its biggest challenge at Jason, when he was suddenly caught in a storm he never saw coming, it wasn't just his own fate at stake. It was the future of that family, that little island of hope that depended on him. And that made everything Jason did, every choice he made, carry the weight of love, sacrifice, and a desperate hope to protect those who meant the most. Jason Carter was not your typical teenager. At just 17, he carried a quiet strength, a calm wisdom beyond his years that set him apart from many in his neighborhood. Growing up in one of Chicago's toughest areas, Jason had learned early how easy it was to get lost in the chaos around him, but he made a choice to stay focused, to stay responsible, and to stay true to who he wanted to become. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't seek attention or look for shortcuts. Instead, Jason kept to himself, carrying a steady seriousness that surprised even his teachers. When most kids were distracted by the noise and distractions of their environment, Jason was the one quietly doing his homework in the library, asking questions and dreaming of a different life. That life, he hoped, would be far away from the struggles he knew all too well. Jason was intelligent, not just book smart, but street smart. He had a sharp mind that noticed things others missed. Whether it was the little he wanted to go to college, not just because it was expected or because others told him to, but because he saw it as his way out. A chance to break the cycle of poverty that had gripped his family for generations. College was more than a goal. It was a promise he made to himself and to his mom. He dreamed of studying something that would give him a real future, maybe business or engineering, something stable that could lift his family out of struggle. Jason imagined the day when he could provide for Lisa and Emily without worry, when bills wouldn't be a constant source of stress, when Emily could have the childhood she deserved, filled with joy instead of hardship. Those dreams kept Jason going, even on the hardest days. But dreams alone don't protect you from reality. Jason knew the dangers lurking in his neighborhood: gang violence, drugs, crime. He had seen friends fall into those traps, seen lives shattered before they even really began. And every day, he made a conscious decision to stay away from those paths. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when friends pressured him to join in, when the temptation of quick money or easy popularity whispered just a little too loudly. But Jason's resolve was strong. He reminded himself who he was, someone who wanted more than what his surroundings offered. Sometimes that made him feel isolated, like an outsider in his own neighborhood. But Jason believed that the isolation was temporary. He was investing in a future that others couldn't see yet. In school, Jason was known for being quiet but sharp. Teachers saw potential in him. Students respected him for his honesty and fairness. He was the kind of kid who would step up quietly when someone was being treated unfairly, not with loud protests, but with steady, calm support. His natural kindness was part of what made him special. Even with all the pressure he faced at home and in the streets, Jason never lost sight of the people around him. He had a genuine heart, one that cared deeply about his family, his friends, and his community. And though life wasn't easy, Jason held on to hope, the kind of hope that was hard-earned but unbreakable. This hope would soon be tested in ways Jason never expected, because sometimes life throws a curveball so big it shatters all your plans. But in those moments, true character shines brightest. Jason's story was about to reach a crossroads, a moment where his intelligence, his responsibility, and his dreams would collide with the harsh realities of a justice system that often overlooks kids like him. And in that courtroom, Jason would make one unexpected move that would shake everyone to their core. But before that day, before the storm, Jason was simply a boy with a dream, a boy determined to rise above, to protect his family, and to never give up. Before everything, he wanted to go to college, not just because it was expected or because others told him to, but because he saw it as his way out. A chance to break the cycle of poverty that had gripped his family for generations. College was more than a goal. It was a promise he made to himself and to his mom. He dreamed of studying something that would give him a real future, maybe business or engineering, something stable that could lift his family out of struggle. Jason imagined the day when he could provide for Lisa and Emily without worry, when bills wouldn't be a constant source of stress, when Emily could have the childhood she deserved, filled with joy instead of hardship. Those dreams kept Jason going, even on the hardest days. But dreams alone don't protect you from reality. Jason knew the dangers lurking in his neighborhood: gang violence, drugs, crime. He had seen friends fall into those traps, seen lives shattered before they even really began. And every day, he made a conscious decision to stay away from those paths. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when friends pressured him to join in, when the temptation of quick money or easy popularity whispered just a little too loudly. But Jason's resolve was strong. He reminded himself who he was, someone who wanted more than what his surroundings offered. Sometimes that made him feel isolated, like an outsider in his own neighborhood. But Jason believed that the isolation was temporary. He was investing in a future that others couldn't see yet. In school, Jason was known for being quiet but sharp. Teachers saw potential in him. Students respected him for his honesty and fairness. He was the kind of kid who would step up quietly when someone was being treated unfairly, not with loud protests, but with steady, calm support. His natural kindness was part of what made him special. Even with all the pressure he faced at home and in the streets, Jason never lost sight of the people around him. He had a genuine heart, one that cared deeply about his family, his friends, and his community. And though life wasn't easy, Jason held on to hope, the kind of hope that was hard-earned but unbreakable. This hope would soon be tested in ways Jason never expected, Because sometimes life throws a curveball so big, it shatters all your plans. But in those moments, true character shines brightest. Jason's story was about to reach a crossroads, a moment where his intelligence, his responsibility, and his dreams would collide with the harsh realities of a justice system that often overlooks kids like him. And in that courtroom, Jason would make one unexpected move that would shake everyone to their core. But before that day, before the storm, Jason was simply a boy with a dream, a boy determined. Jason was sitting in the living room, trying to finish his homework under the dim glow of a single lamp when the first shots rang out. He froze. His heart pounded wildly, his breath catching in his throat. Instinctively, Jason dropped to the floor, crawling behind the worn couch that stood between him and the front window. His hands trembled. His mind raced. "What's happening?" he thought, his young mind struggling to process the chaos unfolding just beyond the walls of his home. The muffled screams and frantic footsteps outside made it clear this was not just some distant noise. Danger was close. Too close. Lisa, Jason's mom, rushed into the room, grabbing Emily and pulling her close. Her face was tight with worry, her voice barely a whisper. "Stay down, stay quiet, don't move." Jason nodded, his eyes wide and scared, but he obeyed without question. Outside, the neighborhood was a whirlwind of panic. Neighbors bolted their doors, children clung to their parents, and cars screeched away in desperation. Somewhere, sirens began to wail, growing louder with each passing second. Inside the Carter home, time seemed to stretch endlessly. Jason could hear the sharp pops of the gunfire echoing through the streets, each one a reminder of how fragile life was, how quickly everything could change. He thought of his family, of Emily's bright smile, Lisa's tireless strength. He thought of his dreams, fragile and distant like stars barely visible through the city's haze. And then came a noise Jason would never forget. A sudden crash from the front door. His heart stopped. Fear slammed into him like a tidal wave. Before he could react, the door burst open. 2 police officers rushed inside, their faces set in serious, unreadable expressions. "Get down!" one shouted. Jason obeyed, sinking lower behind the couch, trying to make himself as small and invisible as possible. But even as he complied, a cold wave of confusion swept over him. Why were they here? What did they want from him? Within minutes, Jason was handcuffed, his mind spun in disbelief. He was just a scared kid, a kid trying to keep his family safe, but now he was being accused of something he didn't do, something terrible. The officers wouldn't explain. They only said he was a suspect in the shooting. The sound of sirens pierced the night air, growing louder by the second. Within moments, police cars screeched to a halt outside Jason's neighborhood, their flashing lights casting eerie red and blue shadows over the cracked sidewalks and graffiti-stained walls. Panic and confusion swirled through the streets like a storm. Neighbors peered cautiously from behind curtains. Some ran for cover, others called frantic friends or family. The air was thick with fear. No one knew who had fired the shots or why, but everyone felt the weight of danger pressing down on them. Through this chaos, Jason sat frozen behind the couch, his body shaking, heart pounding like a war drum. Suddenly the front door slammed open and officers rushed inside with weapons drawn, their voices sharp and commanding. "Hands where we can see them. Now!" Jason's head snapped up. His pulse raced as he crawled out from behind the couch, raising his hands slowly, confusion and fear swirling in his eyes. I'm not involved," he stammered, voice barely audible. But the officers didn't lower their guns. The room felt suffocating, heavy with tension and suspicion. "Are you Jason Carter?" one officer barked. Jason nodded, voice trembling. "Yes." Seconds later, cold, unforgiving handcuffs clicked tightly around his wrists. Jason's mind spun. "Why am I being arrested? I didn't do anything. I was inside. I was hiding." He looked up and saw Lisa standing in the doorway, panic etched across her face. She tried to shout something, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos. Outside, neighbors whispered to each other, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Then came the worst. Jason sat in the cold, grey interrogation room, the harsh fluorescent light above flickering faintly. His hands, still cuffed, shook uncontrollably, and his chest tightened with a fear so raw it felt like it might crush him from the inside. How did this happen to me, he thought, eyes wide and disbelief filling every corner of his mind. Just hours ago, he was a normal teenager, juggling school, a part-time job, and looking after his little sister, Emily. Now, he was sitting alone, in a room designed to intimidate, accused of a crime he knew he hadn't committed. Jason swallowed hard. The words echoed in his mind. Attempted murder. It felt like someone had ripped the ground from beneath his feet. The thought of prison, cold, dark, unforgiving, terrified him beyond measure. He remembered the sounds of gunshots that night, the terror gripping his neighborhood, his instinct to hide and stay safe. He was a witness, not a criminal. But no one seemed to hear him. No one believed the boy who stayed quiet and tried to do right. Tears blurred his vision as memories flooded. And Lisa, his mom, working late into the night to keep the family afloat. Emily's innocent smile when he helped her with homework. The simple dreams he held close. College, a better life, a future beyond these streets. Was it all slipping away, he wondered? Could one false accusation destroy everything? The walls around him felt like they were closing in, and Jason's thoughts spiraled. What if they send me to jail? He whispered to himself, voice breaking. The possibility felt too heavy to bear. He imagined cold metal bars, the loneliness, the endless days with no escape. He thought of Lisa. How would she manage? Could she keep working 2 jobs and still care for Emily alone? Jason's heart clenched with guilt. He wanted to protect his family, but now he was the one who needed protection. Suddenly, a knock at the door startled him. His public defender entered carrying a thick file. "Jason," she said gently, pulling up a chair, "I know this feels overwhelming, but we're going to fight this. I'm here for you." Jason nodded, trying to absorb her calm presence, but inside, a storm raged. How could they believe those lies? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't do anything." She sighed, eyes filled with empathy. "I know, but sometimes the system isn't fair. The witness was scared, confused, and people make mistakes." Jason clenched his fists. "Mistakes like this could ruin my life." His mind raced with every worst-case scenario, a life lost to a mistake, a future stolen. Before it even began. "I'm scared," he admitted finally, voice cracking. "Scared they'll take everything from me." His lawyer leaned forward, voice steady. "Fear is natural, Jason, but don't lose hope. We'll gather every piece of evidence. We'll prove where you were that night." Jason's heart fluttered, with a tiny spark of hope, but the weight of uncertainty still pressed heavily. Outside the room, the world moved on. Neighbors whispered rumors, some pointing fingers, others praying for justice. Jason was suddenly painfully aware of how quickly a community's trust can be lost. The same streets where he'd played as a child now felt foreign and hostile. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. Every noise startled him. Every shadow felt like a threat. He lay awake, thinking about the future, about freedom, about truth, about the chance to clear his name. His life had changed in an instant, and the road ahead was uncertain. But deep down, Jason knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to give up. Jason sat across from his public defender, a woman named Ms. Reynolds, in a small, cluttered office. She looked at him kindly, but with a hint of urgency. "Jason," she began carefully, "the prosecution is offering a plea deal. If you accept, you could avoid a lengthy trial and potentially get a lighter sentence." Jason's heart pounded. The words felt like a test, a crossroads that would change everything. Ms. Reynolds continued, "It's not a confession. It's a way to protect yourself. Trials are unpredictable, and sometimes it's safer to accept a deal." Jason shook his head slowly, eyes fierce with determination. "I didn't do this," he said firmly. "I won't admit to something I'm not guilty of, no matter what happens." Ms. Reynolds sighed, understanding both his courage and the risks. "I respect that, Jason, but I want you to be prepared. Fighting this will be hard." Jason met her gaze. "I'd rather fight for the truth than live with a lie." In that moment, Jason made a choice. No deal, no giving up. He would prove his innocence no matter the cost. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Jason sat quietly, trying to steady his nerves. From the moment the trial began, the prosecution wasted no time painting a harsh picture. "Jason Carter," the prosecutor declared, "is a known troublemaker from this neighborhood, someone involved in gang activity." But Jason wasn't a gang member. He was just a kid trying to survive in a tough world. The case relied heavily on shaky eyewitness testimony. One witness claimed they saw Jason near the scene, but their story kept changing under pressure. Another couldn't clearly identify him at all. Despite this, the prosecutor used stereotypes about Jason's neighborhood and appearance to sway the jury's opinion. Jason's defense attorney tried to point out these flaws, but the damage was already done. The courtroom felt heavy, filled with tension and doubt. Could truth really overcome prejudice and fear? Jason clenched his fists silently, knowing the fight for justice had only just begun. As the trial unfolded, Jason listened carefully. Something didn't feel right. The witnesses' stories kept shifting. Details changed. Timelines didn't add up, and their memories seemed clouded. Jason's sharp eyes caught every contradiction. How could someone be sure when they couldn't even remember clearly? During a brief recess, Jason leaned toward his attorney and whispered, "There are too many holes in their stories. We need to dig deeper." His attorney nodded, understanding the importance of this observation. Jason wasn't just a passive defendant anymore. He was paying attention, searching for the truth in the cracks of their testimonies. Determined, Jason silently vowed to fight harder, not just for himself, but for justice. Jason's determination never wavered. He insisted his attorney request surveillance footage from nearby cameras, a chance to prove his innocence. The courtroom was hesitant at first, but Jason's persistence paid off. The judge agreed to review the footage, hoping it might shed new light on the night in question. This moment marked a turning point. If the cameras showed Jason elsewhere, everything could change. Hope flickered in Jason's chest. Maybe justice was still within reach. The surveillance footage arrived like a lifeline. All eyes in the courtroom fixed on the screen as the grainy images began to play. There was Jason, but not near the crime scene. Instead, the footage showed him standing outside a local diner, calmly talking with a friend. The timestamp was clear, minutes before the gunshots rang out. Then, just moments later, Jason was seen walking away from the diner, completely removed from the chaos that had erupted nearby. But the real shock came next. The camera angle shifted, capturing a figure moving quickly through a shadowed alley. The suspect's face was blurry, but unmistakably different from Jason. This person was caught in the act, the very moment the shots were fired. Murmurs spread through the courtroom. The prosecution scrambled, trying to cast doubt on the footage's authenticity, but the judge allowed it. Jason's heart pounded as hope surged inside him. For the first time, the truth was clear. He was innocent. This unexpected evidence was about to shatter the case against him. The courtroom, once filled with doubt and suspicion, now held its breath, waiting for what would come next. As the surveillance footage played, the courtroom atmosphere shifted instantly. The prosecution's lead attorney rose sharply, his voice cutting through the silence. "This footage is irrelevant and unreliable," he argued. "It doesn't prove Mr. Carter's innocence beyond doubt. The lighting is poor, the angles unclear. It could be anyone. Whispers filled the room as the judge listened carefully, weighing the objections. Jason sat still, his eyes fixed on the screen, heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. After a tense moment, the judge's gavel came down firmly. "The court will admit the footage as evidence," she declared. "It is up to the jury to decide its weight." The murmurs grew louder. Some spectators exchanged glances, sensing a turning point. The prosecution looked frustrated but composed, knowing this evidence might unravel their entire case. Jason's attorney leaned in, whispering words of reassurance. In that charged silence, the courtroom waited, the tension thick as the story shifted. The moment when doubt was officially cast on the accusations. Jason stood slowly, his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. "I'm not just a statistic or a stereotype. I'm a kid who dreams, who loves his family, who wants a chance to live a good life. This isn't just about me. It's about truth, fairness, and fighting against the judgment before the facts are known. Everyone deserves justice, no matter where they come from. I ask you to see me for who I really am, not what assumptions say. Please, let fairness guide your decision." His words hung in the air, touching every heart in the courtroom. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as the jury retreated to deliberate. Inside those walls, every second stretched endlessly. Outside, the community gathered quietly, some holding signs, others whispering prayers. The air was thick with hope and fear as neighbors and friends waited for justice to be served. Inside the jury room, voices rose and fell, debates swirling around every piece of evidence. Doubt crept in alongside uncertainty. Could they truly convict a boy without solid proof? Was justice being done? After what felt like an eternity, the jury returned, their faces serious, the weight of their decision visible. The judge called the courtroom to order, and the four persons stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant Jason Carter not guilty." The room erupted. Some cried tears of relief, others sat in stunned silence. Jason's mother wept openly, while Jason himself fought to hold back overwhelming emotions, relief mixed with disbelief. The fight was over, but the scars remained. Outside, the crowd's cheers echoed, a testament to a hard-won victory against injustice. Jason sat quietly after the verdict, his heart pounding with relief. Years of fear and uncertainty suddenly lifted, but beneath that relief was a deeper awareness. He knew his freedom was just one small victory in a much bigger fight. So many others, caught in similar battles, were still trapped by injustice, their voices unheard. In that moment, Jason made a silent promise to use his story not just for himself, but to help others like him. To be a voice for those silenced, a beacon of hope in dark times. Soon, clips of Jason's powerful courtroom speech spread across the internet like wildfire. His words resonated far beyond the courtroom walls, sparking national conversations about fairness, prejudice, and the need for change. Scholarship offers poured in, and interviews with major media outlets followed. Jason, once a quiet teen from a tough neighborhood, now stood as a symbol of courage and resilience. Today, Jason is enrolled in college, focused on building a brighter future. He mentors youth in his community, sharing his story and encouraging them to believe in second chances. He speaks out against injustice whenever he can, hoping to change the system that nearly destroyed him. As Jason looks ahead, hope shines in. His eyes, a powerful reminder that truth and perseverance can shatter even the darkest barriers.